Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. If you desire to intimately connect with yourself, significant other, children, family, friends, community, and higher power, then this is the show for you. We explore intimate topics, inspiring life stories, spirituality, and insightful tips on strengthening relationships. The show is hosted by Dr. April and her co-host, Coach K. Let's get this episode of the Bringing Intimacy Back show started. We share with you today the secret power to intimacy to create the life you love or love the life you create. Now here's your host, Dr. April, and her co-host, Coach K.
Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. How are you doing, Coach K?
I'm doing amazing. And how about yourself?
I'm doing great. I love the month of April. Yes, it's not only is it my name. I wasn't born in April, but I have to shout out to, I have a wonderful daughter who was actually born in April. So I'm going to do a shout out for happy birthday. Yeah, it's been 29 years. Yeah.
All right. Happy birthday.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm so excited because we're talking about a topic that's kind of dear to my heart. It's something that I had to contemplate. It's that parent trap. Do we stay together? Do we stay married for the kids?
Yeah, that is. You said it very well, that title, The Parent Trap. This is a very important topic.
Yeah, because many people come from broken homes.
Yes.
And they don't want to repeat that.
Yes. And so sometimes you do things that turn out to not be the best. So many of us have to make that decision almost every day. Multiple people are making that decision. Do I stay because we have children, or do I walk away for those children?
I love how you put that. Do I walk away for the children? Yeah, because many people think if I'm walking away, it's selfish. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like I'm not being a good mom. I'm not, providing them with X, Y, or Z. So yeah, but before we get into that, I want to actually talk about the charity of the month, because we always do a charity. And the charity, it's also kind of relating. It is about children, because April's a great month to talk about what are we doing for the children. And we have this great charity of the month. It's called For Every Child, and it provides a lot of resources and services to help the community deal with children who are abused and neglected by their community and all that kind of stuff, or by their families. So this organization helps strengthen communities and helping children of abuse and neglect.
That's good. Every single resource that we can find that helps our children is absolutely necessary. For Every Child is awesome.
Right, definitely. So getting back to this whole topic of today, parent trap, staying married for the kids. Yeah.
So often that decision is made without the children in mind. It may seem like, I'm staying here for the children. But if you really take a step back, we as the adults, we're really thinking about our feelings, how we feel. And that's what makes the decision that much harder. If we strictly based it on the children and kind of numbed our own feelings, I think the decision would be a little bit easier. But that's a tough decision.
Right. Because one of the things that people may be facing is cultural and or religious belief system or spiritual belief systems.
Right.
I'm married to this person, but things are not working out. Whether you're feeling abused, neglected, or we're always arguing, or, there's been an affair, there's
Hmm.
addiction, there's severe mental health. What do we do?
Yeah. And there's literally no handbook on all of these things, just like there's no handbook on raising those children. And so,
Hmm.
like you said, many folks have come from broken homes. And so they've already set in their mind growing up, if I have children, they will not be brought up in a broken home.
Hmm.
But the thing is, when we put that title on a broken home, we always put the picture of a single parent there.
Right.
Rarely do we associate a broken home with a two-parent home, when in the reality is there are so many two-parent homes that are the actual broken home.
Hmm.
When we can start to think of it and look at it from that perspective, then we can stop singling out and making that word only associated one way. That also can help to make that decision, a lot better. Is that broken home, like some of the things you just named, was there abuse involved? That's a broken home. So
Right.
if we no longer want to raise our children in broken homes, then we have to make that decision. Is this abuse getting better or worse? Is this abuse something that I want to tolerate? Is this abuse something that I want my children to witness? Is this abuse affecting my children? Those are all of the magnitudes of the questions, that a small portion of the questions that we need to ask. Because yes, abuse for many people, that's a one and done. That's a no, there is
Right.
no exception when it
Right.
comes to that abuse.
Hmm.
And for some, there is an exception because maybe they see that this was a one off, or, something dramatic has happened, and the abuser, or whatever that abuse is, financial, mental, emotional, physical, sexual, there are lots of different abuses. That person is actively seeking help, and you can see a difference. But of course, that's a rabbit hole that we don't have time to go down right now. But those are some of the determining factors of, do I stay because the children need both parents, or am I going to make things worse for my children by staying?
Hmm. And I'm glad you clarified about abuse,
Hmm.
because people say, yeah, I'm definitely out of there if I get, hit or punch. But then there's this other forms of abuse.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Whereas that emotional abuse where I'm crying every night. I can barely
Hmm.
go to work. I'm sitting in my closet. I'm not actually actively helping my kids with their homework. Or maybe I can't even spend a dime, no money whatsoever. I'm trying to work 10 jobs just to financially be able to do something. And I'm not home, and maybe he's not, doing his responsibility financially. And so it's more than just physical abuse.
Yes.
It is that emotional, or it's that verbal abuse. If your
Yep.
kids are hearing you called a variety of awful names, or, yeah, anything derogatory. So those are all different forms of abuse. And then the other aspect is, some people say, I hear in session, well, my kid doesn't really know what's going on. You know?
Mm.
Yeah, we don't do this in front of the kids.
Forgetting that they were once kids and how much we knew and saw as children.
Right, right. And I would just even explain, because I had one couple and they were like, yeah, they don't know at all. And so, they thought their kids didn't know. But then she knew about her parents at age 8. And this was back in the day. And I was telling her, well, an 8-year-old back in my day is less mature than 8-year-old these days with the internet and all that. So yeah, your kid knows even much more than you did.
Yeah, 1,000%. And outside of that, because our children, as they grow up, they have less blinders on. So they are very open to receive. They feel a lot of things. And like you said, they're not stupid by far. The things you could be, say that was the case where you all go out in the car and you only argue in the car. You only fight in the car. When you come in, your body language says fighting,
Right.
your expressions says fighting,
Right.
your voices say fighting. Everything about your demeanor and your energy and that environment, when you go and bring yourself inside that fight that you just had, trust me, the children feel it. And because they weren't a party of it, they're receiving it. And so now they're taking that on as, oh, I must have pissed mommy or daddy off because they're angry.
Right.
They're pretending to smile, but they're talking to me aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
They're ignoring me while I'm trying to speak. They're not responding to me. They're walking around with this, this harsh look. And so now they've internalized it as it's something that they've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and that happens a lot. It's like maybe if I hadn't done, if I did my homework that night, I didn't do my homework, 'cause mom mentioned that. Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, or a variety of different things, maybe I didn't go to bed on time, or maybe this and that. Kids internalize it.
Yeah. And because
Yeah,
their little minds aren't mature enough to really, make it make sense fully, they will create whatever it is that makes sense to them. And so many children have run away from home simply because an assumption based on the parents protecting them and not fighting in front of them,
mm-hmm.
but they're left to create the story that it must be me, so I don't need to be around because every time I'm around, mommy and daddy are upset. You know, they they're cold to me because when
Right,
you just come in from a fight, you're not super loving. You're
right.
not giving that child the affection that you normally would give, and so they feel like you don't like them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes, and they can pick up on that, and also how you treat your partner. They internalize, and sometimes say maybe it's okay to say those things. It's
Yeah,
okay to be disrespectful to mama or papa, depending on how this all, relates. So if there's abuse, neglect, if there's things going on, you really have to think, do I stay together? Do I not? And how does this affect the kids?
yeah. There is no more. A child needs to stay in their place. That has proven to not be an effective method of raising the children. So
Mm-hmm.
then you have to kind of let them in on some of the things. And
Right,
who wants to do that? Who wants to involve their children in your fighting? You
right.
know, dealing with maybe infidelity. You don't want to
Mm-hmm.
involve your children in that. So you need to seek support. You need to get the counseling. You need to get the help or make the decision to say, this is something that is a deal breaker for me.
Right,
And maybe I walk away for now. Maybe we separate for now so that we can mend and possibly come back together as one.
right.
That's a conversation that once the decision is made, absolutely, the child needs to be a part of that conversation, not the decision making, but
Mm-hmm.
they need to understand why mommy and daddy or the parents, why us as the adults are separating for now
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't internalize that and say that, well, now, it used to be that they would just come in and not speak to me. Now one of the parents is out of the house. I've now driven a parent away
Right,
because we're not communicating with them.
right, right. And people, if you don't think this is serious, it is really. I was just thinking of a case where the parents were arguing all the time, you know, and then it got to a little bit of physical, of throwing things, and then it got to the point where one partner actually was choking the other partner. Okay, and the kid comes walking in. Okay, and the one partner that is the victim went into a big seizure
Oh
and trying
man.
to get the other partner off, the father off. Yes, and so they got to be rushed to the hospital, and the one victim almost passed away. Okay, then they go back and live back together. Okay. And this has happened all, and now the kid is actually 18, 19, but the kid's
Mhm.
afraid to leave the house because it loves both parties, but it's afraid to leave them alone because it's afraid that one of them may end up dead.
That is that right there
Yeah,
is a form of emotional and mental abuse
right,
that the parents have now from their physical abuse.
right,
They're now having that emotional abuse on their children, not intentionally,
right.
but it's happening because that fear that
Mm-hmm.
turns real.
Right.
And not only I'm pretty sure that they not want to leave home, but what does that do for that child as an adult trying to get into a relationship?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And what does that do to, as I was talking to the victim, what does that do to the stunt growth of your child?
Mm.
18, 19 won't even leave the house. Yeah, because of that. So parents have to really think, and they start seeing this as children watch their parents have a relationship. That's how they start to develop and think about relationships as they get older.
Right.
And the sad thing is many times when we see a parent being abused, we say to ourselves, we never want to be the abuser. That's never going to happen whatsoever. And then we end up in a relationship, stress happens, and there is a possibility that we will end up being an abuser too, or the victim.
Yes.
People never think they're going to ever be the abuser or the victim. That happens.
And if that's the only type of relationship that you've ever seen and that you've ever known, and it's easier because you already know how to play that role, then absolutely you're gonna play the abuser or the victim. Very possible. Unless the decision is made by that child to say, you know what, I don't want to, and I'm going to get support so that I don't X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Being careful not to go too far into, because I've listened to people say, I never want to be like my mom, or I never want to be like my dad, and they have lived their life so hard trying not to be that person that
Right.
they are exactly like that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's also funny is that when people stay together and I've asked, what are you getting out of this relationship? How is your
Mhm.
partner showing up? And I go, does the partner help with the kids? No. Sometimes is the partner working? No. Is the partner cleaning the house? No. And this one person is doing everything, but they're afraid of being separated and being on their own. And I explained to them, you're already being a single parent. You're already doing everything.
Right. And then think about this. You're 25, you grow up, you get the courage to look at your parents and say, when I was young, you guys fought all the time, or you just go to one of them, I didn't understand why did you all stay in that relationship? And then those words, those daggers that come to that child, well, we stay together for you. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
how
Mm.
that is so damaging to
Mm-hmm.
now this child's thinking you endured all of this abuse or this
Right.
anger or this tension because of me.
Right.
So all of those things that they imagined when they were little and the stories that they created, you've now solidified that instead of taking ownership and saying I
Mm-hmm.
stayed because I didn't know how to leave.
Right.
you have put that entire that reason, that excuse of staying around. Oh, I stayed because of you. That's a lot to carry around. That's a heavy load for
Yeah,
and I say child, but I'm talking about 25, even 30 years, even 40 years old. That's a heavy load.
right, right. And like I said, I get it. When I uh, with my daughter's father, yeah, I decided really at a young age that I was not going to stay in that type of toxic relationship. But it was hard
Hmm.
because in your mind, you're like, oh my gosh, other people going to talk about you. You're going to be a single person whatsoever. But 29 years later, it was the best thing. And even she realized, I mean, she has a relationship with her dad, but even she realized it, Mom, thank you. Just because she knows our personalities and that would not have, yeah, that didn't work. Yeah,
Yeah, you were able to push through your own feelings and your own attachment because that's your child's father.
right,
You
right,
know,
right,
that's somebody that helped you create a life that you
right.
love
And they're
beyond
always
bounds.
right. They're always going to be in the person's life, but you can determine those boundaries and what is healthy and what's unhealthy.
1,000%. And one partner may hold that over the other partner's head.
Hmm.
If you walk away from me, you're walking away from our children. You
Mm.
know, that's also damaging.
That is
So
very damaging.
being guilted into staying.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, to and I know it's a touchy subject, in the sense of, well, they're going to just be my kids, and I'm not going to let them have any interaction with their, yes,
Yeah,
but that's
that
something that,
definitely happens.
yeah, that definitely happens. You many times may need to get therapy, to see what kind of guidelines and boundaries and to see if maybe this person is healthy, maybe this person unhealthy, maybe this person may need supervised visitation. But to just automatically say, hey, that's it, I'm going to take the kids and try to run, yeah, it can be very damaging on all ends.
Yeah. Even if you're saying I'm doing this to protect the children, at some point you have to bring that circle back around
Right,
because no matter what is happening with these two adults, if there's no imminent danger to the child,
right.
pulling one of the parents out of their lives is not healthy for the child at all. It's
Hmm.
unfair to the child because now this child almost has to make a decision to speak up and say, I actually want to spend time with the other parent.
Right,
And in saying that, they feel like, well, if I say that, then I'm against
right.
this parent.
Right. And it
And that
shouldn't
is
be
so
its
unfair.
responsibility to say that. I mean, that doesn't, yeah, yeah. And if you're a father or mother and you're separated and you don't have your kids, it's really important for you to fight and try to get to see them. Don't
Yes.
just walk away because all of this, it's, how can I put it? I think you're responsible for what you bring into this earth and
Yep.
how you teach them how to live.
1,000%. I've talked to folks and I hear, well, she's doing this and she's keeping me from this and she. I said, well, what are you doing? You
Right,
know that the court system works both ways. There's not a women's only line, there's not a
right,
men's only line. If you feel as though you are being unfairly treated, your child is being kept away from you, then you can actually have that intervention because if between the two of you the communication is not working and one is not budging on visitation, then you take the steps, you make the effort. One party is not the end all be all of a case, and a judgment of a case is not solidified
right,
if you can show that I'm not being able to spend a fair amount of time with my child and I would like to, then do the work. Don't just
hmm,
sit back and say, well, she won't let me see her, so I guess
right.
that's it.
Right. You have to stand up and, like you said, do the work. Yeah,
And
yeah.
some people stay so they don't have to do the work, and that's unfair to not just the child, is unfair to the other parent, and it's unfair to yourself
Mm-hmm.
to stay because it's easier. The old saying is cheaper to keep her. That is such an unfair
Right.
statement, especially when it comes to parents and their children. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually not cheaper. That was a monetary thought, but let's think about the person. It's not cheaper because
Mm-hmm.
you're affecting the child, yourself, and the other person. Not only the three of you or how many children you have, but the entire family.
Right.
Because let's be real, you all are connected to family, other family members. This
Mm-hmm.
child has two families, full families. And when this is happening, it's ripping apart the outpour of the family. Because
Exactly.
now they're looking like we have to choose sides. We don't know what to say. We don't know. So it's such a ripple effect when right at the core we can make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
If
And it,
this
like,
is no longer, mhm,
yeah, but like you were saying, the adults need to make those decisions.
yes,
It doesn't need to be the kids.
even when
Yeah.
they're 15, 16 years old, they don't need to be in that decision.
Right, right. But sometimes parents throw it out on the kids. What do you guys think? Should we stay together? Should we not stay together? I've seen that. I've seen it
Mm,
where there's multiple kids and they're like, well, I'll take the girl and you take the boy. And do you know how that, they're like trying to split everything equal, but how damaging that is?
because now
Yeah,
I feel like you don't like me. The one that took the other kid, like, what's wrong with me? Why
exactly.
didn't daddy take me? Because I'm a girl, because I'm horrible, because I got a D on my report card.
Right, right, right. And then it just messes also up the brother and sister, or the sister and sister, the sibling aspect.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Divorce, separation is messy.
Hmm.
Staying together is messy.
Hmm.
Yeah. So if you're in this kind of relationship where you feel like it's so toxic, one of the things I talk about is first what's going on inside you.
Yeah.
Because inside you, if you're toxic or a house is divided, then of course it's going to feel divided in the house. Being able to understand what's going on with you, trying to communicate or getting a third party to help, whether it's a pastor, a therapist, and sometimes things can work out and sometimes you have to realize it's not going to work. And that's okay.
Yes.
Then it's trying to figure out how do we communicate. And when you communicate to your kids, when you realize it's not going to work, it's something that I think a couple should do together and should not put blame.
Right. Take accountability for your own role in what's happening,
Hmm.
and then that's it. You should only speak on yourself when you're having that conversation with the child or children.
Hmm. Yeah, because blaming the other party is damaging. And then many times it may cause one or both kids or whatever to lose respect, either for you or the person you're talking about.
Yeah. And then it can make it easy for the children to play the mom and pop card. You know,
Mhm.
when we're over here, we can manipulate mom into, getting us anything we want because she doesn't want us to like dad more,
Right.
or vice versa. So you definitely want to be very careful with the conversation. Even if you have to have a mediator there for the conversation, practice the conversation before you have it. You know, schedule an
Right.
appointment with Dr. April. Say, hey, we just want to have this conversation with you first before we
Right.
talk to the children. because
Hmm.
unintentionally you may be doing the blaming without thinking about it.
Right, right. And anticipate some of the questions that they're going to ask,
Yeah,
and anticipate that it's going to take them a time to process and it's going to be an adjustment.
it is. And you have to allow the children the time to grieve the ending of the relationship of their parents as they knew it.
Right.
And you know that there are stages of grief that you can go through as one singular emotion, or you can go back and forth with them. So just like you as the adults went through your emotional part of whatever, you went through all of those. Give those children that grace to also feel, continue to ask those questions and understand what's happening.
Hmm. Right, exactly. And if it does turn out to be separated, then you have to learn how to balance your life as a single parent, how that looks like, how to make sure, because sometimes when people are single, there's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I've never actually spent time with my kids without my other partner. I don't even know what to do. So I'm going to put him in front of a TV or some video games. Yes. No, yeah.
Yes,
But if you have them, you do stuff with them. Yeah, because they need to be more interactive with you now.
absolutely. And understand that because you're separated, if it gets that, but because one or both parties decided to walk away from each other, that does not mean you get to walk away from being parents together. And I want to
Exactly.
say that again. Just
Say
because
it.
you decided that the marriage or the relationship is severed, you are not severing the parenting ship relationship. That needs to still be, because like you said, if there's one parent who was mostly majority working and they weren't in the home, and so they don't know how to keep the child's company or with the child, like that parent who was there, if questions come up from the other party, being nasty about it does not
Mm,
help the child.
right.
Holding information back does not help the child. If the parent wants to know, I don't even know what our kid likes, if they're coming to you to admit that, that's a huge step in itself. Don't
Hmm.
continue the foolishness of what the relationship was into being the parent, the co parents for the child. That's not fair to the child.
Right. Exactly. And I'm glad you said that. It's hey, my partner's coming and asking, and this is in benefit to my kid. Let me suck up, my pride or my whatever, anger, upset, hurt, and give him or her an answer that's going to benefit my child.
Right.
Yeah,
And don't try to be the winner. You don't need to talk about, well, your daddy didn't even know, da da da. So I had to, that child does not need that information.
exactly.
That is just, if you need to write it in a diary because you have to get it off your chest, if you need to call them back later and spew whatever.
Hmm.
But that discussion, and I've seen it too many times, filling your child's head with just negativity, what you're doing is continuing that toxic relationship that you just took them out of. And now you're creating a new one where you are. And
Hmm.
that's not right.
Right. And I'm going to follow up with that your child cannot be your best friend or your therapist or whatever, your best friend or your best girlfriend when you're, separating or divorcing. Yeah. And sometimes you may think, oh, yeah, they're 13, 14, 16. They don't need to hear your relationship drama.
No,
Yeah,
they do not. And they're
they do
not
not.
interested in your relationship drama.
Right. And they're not even mature enough. They have their own stuff that they've got to deal with, their own teenage years. You know what I'm saying? And if you have a person of the opposite gender, like, female, and you have a son, don't try to make your son your husband.
Oh
Or if
God,
you're
yeah.
a husband and you have your daughter and you're trying to make that the wife of the house, don't put that much. Let the kid be a kid.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, they are not responsible for the separation and the piece of the home that's now missing. They do not feel that adult void. They're still the child. So
Right.
don't add an absorbent amount of, well, you need to make sure that dinner is cooked at night, or you need to regular cooking and cleaning that happens for children age appropriately as they get older. Yeah, I get it. But making a child responsible for your dinner every day when you get home from work,
Right.
just because you know that your partner's not in the home anymore, that's not a
Right.
thing. So when you go through any type of separation and you have to make that decision to walk away, getting in contact with a third party, a mediation, even if it's a neutral friend that you trust with this
Mhm.
information, talk to them,
Right.
because if that's a good and true friend or a counselor or a coach, they're going to let you know when you say silly things like, well, she called and she wanted to get this, but I was like, I'm not giving her this because she should have da 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 da. That person should look at you and say, that's actually, that affects your child,
Right.
and so you need to go ahead and give them a call now
Hmm.
and let them know that practice is over at 2 every day so that they can make arrangements.
Right.
Don't use your child as bait to get back at the other parent. It's petty, it's silly, and it hurts the children.
Hmm. Definitely. And besides getting a third party negotiator or therapist or pastor, I think it's also important to start also lining up your resources.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Whether if you're going to start to need a babysitter, or a variety of different things, or someone to help drop off, pick up, whatever, start lining those things up. Because, like I said again, and we mentioned earlier, we don't want to throw it all on the kid. And yeah, or throw it all on the person you just left because you're trying to start to. And it's okay to say, hey, to other people, this is what's going on, people that you
Right.
trust, and see who also has ways to help. And the other thing that I want to also mention is it's also important to let your kids' teachers, counselors know. Yeah, because what happens at home does show up in the classroom,
Yep.
how kids show up. Yeah, yeah. So if you're trying to keep it all a secret and don't want your kids to say anything, that's not healthy at all.
No, it's really not. And I'm very glad you said that, because yes, most parents keep that to themselves. The child starts getting in trouble at school, and the
Hmm.
parents like, well, I don't know what's going on. You absolutely do.
Yeah.
you know, Pull that whole 1970s frame of mind, 1980s, 1990s thought, what stays in this house, what goes on in this house stays in this house. You got to throw that away, because you're sending your child from that house into the world. And if the
Right.
world doesn't understand that this child is actually going through something, especially in the grade school, you know, absolutely in high school as well, but elementary, where they really have no real concept and they really can't figure this thing or put pieces
Hmm.
together, the comprehension is not there. In middle school,
Oh, yeah.
comprehension is really not there. Most emotions in those time frame of age shows up as just anger,
Hmm.
because they don't know how to express it otherwise. So having a counselor and teacher who knows, okay, I see that they're starting to get a little anxious, or a little anxiety is coming up. They're starting to get a little aggressive. Let me pull them to the side and see how I can calm them, or send them to the guidance counselor. Say, hey, this is what's going on at home. And it's not giving them an excuse, but it's helping them with a reason.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, and there's so much support out there for parents. I mean, there's divorce recovery groups, there's women groups, there's men's group to help as single dads. Family support. There's resources out there, and so one of the main things we're saying is to ask for help. To also to realize that many times in life we think our life is going to go one way and it doesn't. And it's okay to make that adjustment, that change with the right support. Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this has been an amazing topic that I think was much needed, you know?
Yeah.
Yes. So we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're here about what's the upcoming topics for the next time at the BIB show. We'll be back in a moment.
In a world where stress and anxiety seem to be constant companions, finding a safe space is essential. Welcome to Therapist in Sarasota, where we hear you and we care about you. Take the first step towards healing and transformation. Contact us today to schedule your appointment. Your mental wellness matters.
Welcome back to the Bringing Intimacy show, where intimacy is real. And we've been talking, and I didn't label it, but we've been talking about that intimate connection that happens in families, and when is it time to separate, you know, or try to work it through, and how that impacts the children. And this was just a great topic that we had. So definitely tell us what's coming up.
Absolutely. So on May the 2nd, it's May already, we are going to take a look back at the impact of alcohol on intimacy. On May the 9th, we're going to have the 10 best date night ideas for an unforgettable evening. That's going to be with Dr. April and myself. And then on May 16th, we're going to take a look back at 22 intimate ways to improve your mental health, because we don't want to forget that May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes, definitely. So this has been an awesome show, and we will see you guys next week. And if you'd like us, please follow us and rate us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye. This has been the Bringing Intimacy show. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Bringing Intimacy Back, where intimacy is real. You can also find us at bringingintimacyback.com, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Dr. April Brown's 7-book series, Improving Intimacy, is now on Amazon. We'll see you next Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Don't forget to follow, share, and subscribe.